right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 13th meeting of the Berlin Board of Education. We are going to call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our favorite part of the meeting. We have student presentations this evening. So I will turn it over a little bit to the superintendent, and then we can turn it over to the Griswold School, who's here to present to us this evening.
I'm very happy to have Mr. Campbell here, principal of Griswold School, is going to introduce his staff and students here. We had an opportunity at our parent group last week to see some samples of your work, and it was fantastic. The work you're going to see this evening by the students, we have a capstone at the high school, which has been in place for probably 12 or 13 years. And the work that you're doing in 5th grade, you're going to get an opportunity to do when you get to high school at a larger scale. But seeing what these students can do at a young age is just amazing. So very excited to have you here. Mr. Campbell?
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm really excited to be here with my fabulous 5th grade team. In the back, the teachers will come up and we'll introduce them. And then we also have some outstanding 5th grade students with us tonight. And in a moment, the teachers are going to kind of walk you through, and the students are going to share some work that they've done on public service announcement as part of a 5th grade unit. And to me, it's really, really amazing to see the work that they're doing, and you can see the skills that go into it and the direct connection to the portrait of the graduate work. But I think you can also see the connection at the elementary level and how it actually leads up to the capstone projects at the high school. And even though this is a short clip, it's about 60 seconds, the work that they did, there's so many skills that go into it, and that goes back to the work at the curriculum level. It's not a mistake of how they got here. So there's a lot of planning and building and making sure those skills tie in to the work that they're going to be doing in middle school and then again at high school. And then we also have Mrs. Durante, our instructional technology integrationist, and she's going to highlight some of the work that has taken place to show how the PSAs are made. It's really cool, it's really powerful, so I hope you guys enjoy it because the students here should definitely be really proud of it. They did an outstanding job. We have a few exemplars to show off. So I'm going to introduce our 5th grade teachers. They can come up and present more. So we have Ms. Wade, we have Ms. Boudet, we have Ms. Spinella, and we have Ms. Gemmel, and Ms. Durante if you want to come up as well.
So thank you so much for having us tonight. We're so excited to be able to share our students' work with you. They've worked really hard and we work really hard with them, so we're just so proud of them. On the next slide, you'll just see some of the standards. I'm not going to read them off to you, but please take a look at some of these things that, that we grade the students on. And this is just a sampling of what the students are graded on. But you can see we got together as a 5th grade team to talk about like what are those things on the portrait of a graduate that we hit here in 5th grade. And we took one from each of those categories, but honestly, there are multiple things that we hit upon in 5th grade that hit that same criteria for the portrait of a graduate. And you can just see here, this is one from each of those categories, and they've done a phenomenal job. There are also more standards on a report card that we actually talk about as well. I just pulled up a couple of the most important ones, but the language and skills and vocabulary and speaking and listening standards are all part of what goes into this process. So, thank you.
So we just wanted to walk you through really quick how our reading unit was what made us start this project. So we actually do a reading unit called the Social Issues Unit. There's a complementary writing unit that goes along with it. And in that unit, the kids read realistic fiction books and they meet in book clubs, and there's social issues embedded in them. It allows the kids to sit and have discussions about character relationships, character motivations, character decisions. They deepened their conversations by looking at the different character perspectives around those social issues, and not just the characters in their story, but also how groups of people in the world could be affected by those. And then from there, it allowed us to kind of introduce the advocacy portion of the unit, and that is where we came up with the project of the kids doing a public service announcement to speak on behalf of an issue that is important to them. So I'm going to now let Danielle talk about the public service announcement.
So to begin the process of the PSA, we began by showing the students various PSAs, and they were able to look at the different craft techniques that were used to persuade and inform the audience. From there, they were able to see that the purpose of the PSA is not only to inform and persuade, but also to help for the public to realize ways that they can also help. We provided the students with a rubric that had a list of criteria that, to help guide their PSAs. And then from there, the students were able to conduct their research. So they began to gather facts and statistics, images, and they were able to choose different craft techniques that they wanted to include.
So after that, we had put together a model planner and storyboard for them. So there was 2 steps before they actually got to go on to WeVideo and make their PSA. So they used our models, and then we finished off by talking about what a call to action is and how they could call for the public to help, make them aware. We don't actually solicit donations, although many of them ask you to donate at the end of their PSA. But then we used WeVideo for them to make the actual PSA, and they also had to keep track of their sources and use Noodle tools to make a bibliography. The last thing we talked about was using music to really evoke a certain mood. So I think you'll find that their music choices really get to the heart of things. So I will introduce Mr. Ante.
So the application that the students used is one called WeVideo. It's a video, audio, and GIF making app where the kids can use filters, they can use green screen effects, they can use their voice, music, images, videos, you name it, to create their presentations. In fact, just a few months ago, they also created podcasts, so they used the audio portion of that. But what's nice is we have a subscription for grades 4 through 12, and what's really nice is the app provides free images, videos, you name it, for the kids, so they don't have to worry about unintentionally plagiarizing something. It connects to their Google Drive, so their projects can be saved forever. Teachers also have accounts, and it personally saved me during the time of COVID because I was able to screencast my lessons and put them out there for people to see, which was really nice. There's also a whole classroom section for teachers to put out assignments to their students, work with them virtually, and get the work submitted to them. So they did an amazing job. These kids can figure out anything when it comes to technology. If you show them an application that happens to have a menu with 3 dots, no matter what application you teach them next, they find 3 dots, they know it's a menu, and they can go for it. So please enjoy their projects because they really did an amazing job.
Okay, so you're going to see your first one in just a minute, but I'd like to introduce Rylan Holland to come up. She's going to talk a little bit about her presentation, and then we will see it.
Ocean pollution because it is one of the biggest world problems. And if it is not cared for correctly, it can cause bigger problems. Also, when I think of ocean pollution, I think of trash in the ocean. And when you want to think of the ocean, you don't want to think of trash in it. And we want to save our earth. And my favorite part of doing it was like doing all the research so it could that you put in, because it's not just about like how to help, you actually have to put like facts in it.
introduce a couple of students from my class, John Wesley and Ryan Stewart. You guys want to come over here?
Hi, my name is John, and me and Ryan picked cancer as our PSA topic because a lot of people's lives are not the same because of cancer. But by donating, you could change somebody's life.
Hi, I'm Ryan, and when I was working on the PSA with John, I learned a very important skill, and it was teamwork and time management. I chose teamwork and time management because John and I worked very well, and we decided and figured out what to put in our PSA. And I chose time management because me and John finished at an earlier time than the rest of our class.
Thank you.
And I'm going to invite Maya, Daniel, and JT to come up and talk about their PSA on war.
I chose the topic war because I like learning facts about war and I'm very interested in the topic. I like doing the PSA because I like inserting photos and videos on WeVideo.
I chose the topic war because I know people who are impacted by a war, and I wanted to spread the word to other people to show them how to donate to the cause. I like this project because I learned how to work as a team, work together, and let other people use their ideas and not just mine.
I chose this topic because I like to learn about history and current events. To me, learning about wars is interesting. I also liked using WeVideo when I learned how to use it more. Also, the best part about WeVideo is all the stock media that you could use without having to plagiarize.
And for my class, I'd like to invite up Addison, Ella, and Tamsin.
I chose the topic animal abuse because I like animals and wanted to see and learn about what these abused animals go through. My favorite part of our PSA is when we introduce the problem and share a few statistics because you can realize how many animals get abused. I learned how to plan our PSA using a storyboard and then gather evidence to support our topic.
What this topic means to me is that it is important not to abuse animals because these animals don't deserve it, and it's not fair to the animals to go through this. These animals also won't have a good life like other animals. My favorite part of this PSA was being able to tell people the call to action where we share what people can do to help and solve this problem.
I learned that some animals aren't all the same and don't all have a happy life, but some aren't being abused. All the animals want is a loving and caring family. Through this PSA project, I learned how to use WeVideo and how to include photographs from Google into WeVideo.
Did you know that 100 million animals get abused each year and 10 million die each year from being abused? According to the Humane Society of the United States, the most common animals that get abused are dogs, cats, horses, chickens, and livestock.
In 2022, in the U.S., thousands of all types of animals were reported abused every day.
Abused animals get hit and kicked by their owners. Here are some ways to solve this issue.
Volunteer at a shelter with abused animals.
Adopt animals who get abused and treat them nicely. Donate money so we can help these animals who are hurt and abused.
If you ever get a pet, don't abuse it. And if you know anyone who abuses animals, try to get them to stop abusing.
It's up to you to save these animals.
I think you can see the connection, and it's certainly kind of powerful and probably hit some emotions on it, and that was the purpose. But I think the students just did an awesome job, and certainly led by the teachers. I'm not sure if anyone had any questions.
Yeah, so first off, students, parents, and teachers, thank you for coming out tonight to support your students in sharing these. I think this is very impressive, and I think it's really important to show that vertical alignment that happens from elementary school all the way up through the high school capstone, and how you start taking the standards and preparing the students to research and apply what they've learned. I'm so impressed with the use and integration of technology, utilizing the resources, citing their sources. I love how you guys talked about how the standards were tied to reading and writing, so making real applicable projects that they can relate to, and the students have the ability to choose to, build those reading and writing skills. And also it's cool for us to see, because in our budget, we talk about the subscriptions we have to pay for and the technology integration, so it's really cool for us to be able to see how it's being used. So it's really impressive. So I have a question for the students. Not all of you guys have to answer, but maybe a few of you. What was your favorite part of the project? Oh, let's use a microphone, and then you can just pass it around.
My favorite part of the project was putting everything together and doing the research, because most of the time when you do research, you have to you have to look for many different places and websites, and I think like hopping around the computer and websites is really fun. And when you find like these interesting and cool facts that you never knew about, and learning something new every time find a new fact, I think it's pretty fun. Anyone else?
Excellent. Yeah, just pass the microphone around.
My favorite part was when we put all the components that we used on WeVideo together, because I like doing stuff with technology on like computers.
Yeah, and you guys did a great job with that too. What else?
My favorite part was doing the research, because that actually took up most of it. We had to find 2 different facts to put in. They had to be good facts, and like putting the whole thing together was the easy part, but doing all the research, finding all the informations, getting the facts, finding the pictures, that was the best.
Awesome. Okay. Anyone else want to share their favorite part of the project? How long did it take you guys to complete?
About like 2 weeks, I think.
2 weeks? It's awesome. Great use of time. Anyone else on the board have any questions or comments?
I was just going to ask if you could just remind me again, how is it that you picked the topics that you picked? Were you passionate about those particular areas?
Yeah, I was pretty passionate about my topic, because every time I see a picture about war, it kind of makes my heart break and cry. So I kind of wanted to help the people who are impacted.
Anyone else want to answer that? How'd you pick your topic?
We picked our topic by writing down like which social issues we felt like we really wanted to help solve, and then our teachers would pick one of them, but we had to like really choose like which one do we feel strongly about, like what do I want changed in the world. And then
I heard a couple of you say that you really enjoyed doing the research. So I think that had to do with the fact that you were really interested in the topic, right? And discovering the answers to the questions that were that you were curious about. And then being able to have access to different resources to find those answers. That's awesome. I bet you educated a lot of adults on your various topics as you were doing your research.
Yes, and I would like to thank Mr. Anti for showing us all of the websites.
All the websites, yes.
Great job.
Great. What other questions you guys have? Anyone else from the board have questions or comments?
I was just going to say I love the use of music too, because music really brings on different emotions. If you're very happy with a certain kind of music, it's just something sad or dark, it's a different kind of music. So good job using that, using different types of music with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a comment while I have the parents here. Mrs. Durante is our tech integration specialist. And to understanding, not every school district has a tech integration specialist, but the technology that students get an opportunity to use, not just at the elementary, but throughout K-12, is really exceptional here in Berlin. And it's not, the way it's integrated is you see the level, the quality of those presentations. You could see it on TV and you never would know that a 5th grader produced it. Without having people in positions and funding for technology and for that position, the level, as you saw, would not be there. And I can assure you, as your students move up through the middle school with our Quest program, at the high school with our Capstone, you'll continue to see that quality grow. So I just want to thank you all, students and parents, for being here this evening. So thank you very much for allowing us to show off your work.
Thank you. Let me let parents go, or?
Yes.
All right.
But before they go, recognize all of you.
So before you guys go, we have one more quick presentation, and then we can let you guys take off. So turn it over to the superintendent.
So this is a very special evening. The people sitting in front of you, other than myself, do not get paid for what they do. They do it as a volunteer for the community. And the time that they devote to the children, to the school district, is exceptional. And that's why the school district is where it's at. The time and devotion, as well as dealing with issues, moving the district forward, conversations that they have within the community. So it's an opportunity for us to recognize all of them for all of their work. So I'd like to thank all of you personally. I have a little gift behind you. You can reach back. You have a gold bag. But more importantly, the reason why we're doing it before you leave is there's a big cake in the back, so all the students got a piece of cake, and parents, before you leave, there's a bottle of water. So, but thank you all for all that you do for the Berlin Public Schools and for the community. Thank you all.
Who's in charge of cutting the
Mr.
cake?
Campbell's right there
Mr.
by the
Campbell's
cake.
gonna be
Mr.
cutting the
Campbell, our new
cake.
Griswold principal there, first-year principal. There's a knife right there with a cover on it, Mr. Campbell, so be careful.
Be
If you could
careful.
cut that cake and, well, I'm sure Mrs. Soroyce maybe give you a hand back there. You're sticking your head out. Sorry, Mrs. Soroyce.
So we're gonna take a quick recess, so help yourself to cake and some water before you head out. You're more than welcome to stay the evening. We'd love to have you, but we also know that nights get busy, and it is already 6:30. So we will take a recess, and then when we are done eating cake, we will resume our board meeting. So thank you, families, for coming out, and do not feel obligated to stay this evening. Eat cake. So we are going to recess at 6:29. All right, good evening. We are going to call this meeting back to order at 6:39 p.m. from our short break. We are going to move right into committee reports, so I'm going to turn it over to Sam and Ian for their wonderful slides. You guys have slides tonight, right?
Yes, we do
Great.
this time. All
That's
right.
what we look forward to.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So we are first going to start off with the Upbeat Pancake Breakfast, which will be taking place on March 25th at the Berlin Fairgrounds. It will be open at 7:30 and it will officially close at 11 that morning, not night. And then the district school newspaper, the Red Coat Review, released issue 3 to the entire district on March 8th. And I'm an author actually in this. And from this issue, we have mainly focused on local news and some, which is actually in the front page, there's a very interesting article about what life will be like in 100 years, which was actually very good. And I actually interviewed our science paraprofessional, Miss Nancy Knorr at the high school, who has a plethora of a very interesting background in research and science and all that kind of stuff, and I really want to learn more about her. So that's what we did. And then Rho Kappa's induction of their new members will be this Wednesday, March 15th. These students participated in community service and went through a vigorous process to be inducted. Congratulations to all students for all of their hard work.
All right, and as I'm sure you've all already heard, March weekend went a little differently than we'd expected. Both me and Ian were on it. To start off, I wanted to say that everyone that was there and participated in all the workshops, we all had great bonding time with all students there, and we all left knowing one or two more people that we got there and didn't know in the first place. March weekend is usually our public speaking workshop weekend, so they're students presented in front of people and probably practice skills that they wouldn't practice in a normal school day. So overall, it was a really great experience. But unfortunately, we had hoped that camp had taken care of the bed bug issue. And as you may have already heard, we still ended up having problems with the bed bugs, but it was contained to the boathouse because Upbeat really stepped in, did a really good job controlling everything. And because of this, Upbeat's decided to no longer use Camp Woodstock as a place to go on our weekends. And although we're all sad about this, because we really enjoy going up there and all the time we get to spend together, and it's a really pretty place, we appreciate Upbeat for putting our student safety first over a program. And overall, Ms. Patel especially has done a really great job handling everything. And yeah, we really appreciate all the time she's put into this. All right, and the Slice of Berlin was postponed to Wednesday, March 15th because of the weather, just extra add-in. So on March 21st, BHS is encouraging students and staff to wear crazy socks to show their support for those with Down syndrome. This also goes for anyone else not in Berlin High School, or if you're on social media, you can use the hashtag #LotsOfSocks to post your funky socks, just to continue to show support. And then finally, Mr. BHS will be held on Sunday, March 26th at 6 p.m. in the BHS auditorium. For those of you who don't know what Mr. BHS is, it's a fundraiser for the class of 2023's all-night grad party. So at Mr. BHS, 13 boys that are listed on the screen are going to be put on a talent show type of performance, and it's 80s themed this year. So we all really encourage you to attend. It's a really great time. It's really, really funny. And for students, it's $5. For adults, it's $8 if you buy your tickets in advance, and then $10 if you buy them at the door. So yeah, we'd love to see you guys there. And that is all we have for tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for them? Matt, would you like to report out on the F&O committee's meeting last week?
Sure. I don't have a PowerPoint or a video, but on
Next
last
time.
Thursday, the F&O committee met Thursday morning, which turned into a pretty lengthy meeting, which was held virtually. And the primary point of discussion was the outdoor classroom at Griswold. We spent a lot of time talking about, oh yeah, that's right. Griswold was here, right? So they're on my brain here. At McGee, a lot of time was spent on the questions that we had around security and those issues. And then we also had, we'll be talking about that later tonight further. And then we also had a conversation about the June 13th holiday, which we are also talking about. Juneteenth.
You got it.
See if I can mess anything else up tonight.
It's okay.
I'm sure I can. So both of those topics we'll be talking about later.
Thank you. Carrie?
Yeah, the curriculum committee met briefly just prior to this meeting and discussed some minor changes proposed to the 2023-2024 school calendar and the 2024-2025 school calendar, which will be covered later this evening.
Okay. And I know that the Community Engagement Committee was just rescheduled. I know we don't have a CREC report. Do we have correspondence to the board?
Yes, I have one correspondence to the board. Berlin Board of Education and staff, thank you so much for the beautiful arrangement you sent in my dad's passing. It really meant so much to myself and my family during this most difficult time. It was very much appreciated. With sincere thanks, Cheryl DeRoche and family. She's a para at Hubbard.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda, audience of citizens. Members of the Berlin community are encouraged to share their thoughts with the Board of Education and are invited to do so during this segment of the meeting. When appropriate to do so, members of the board and or the administration may respond to comments. However, in consideration of those in attendance and in an effort to proceed in a timely manner, follow-up discussions may need to take place outside of the meeting setting. It's not considered a back and forth. We're here to hear your concerns, and we may have to follow up later. So residents speaking during this portion of the meeting will be limited to 3 minutes per resident. So I know there was a sign-up sheet. I'm not sure who was first on the sign-up sheet. Cornell, were you first? So just come on up and state your name and address.
Cornell Boudria, 115 Skinner Road. So, budget season is upon us. My only question to the board is with respect to the various game that's played with percentages and cuts and what have you. What percentage is necessary to maintain and fund contractual obligations? That's really kind of the big question that concerns me most. Anything that goes below that number, I and many parents in town are extremely worried about deep cuts to services, programs, and staff. So, if you could enlighten me.
Do you want me to speak to it?
Yeah, so typically this isn't a back, once you're done, I can let him answer. Is that all you have?
That's it.
Okay, so yes, I'll let you answer that since it's a factual, straightforward.
So if you look at the budget document, there's a stacked bar graph as well as a pie graph. In order to maintain current staff and what we believe would be current class sizes in all programs that currently exist, we need 4.23%. That does not include increases to such systems as Power School and all those that typically go up 4 to 7%, nor does it with inflation with supplies. That's just staffing, benefits, 4.23%.
Got it. So 4.23%, that's the number.
That's the number to maintain staff, as you said, staff programming
Right.
as it is this year.
Got it. All right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Cornell, could you just say who's next on that list? Sorry. It's right there. So.
Ruth Lero.
All right. So just come on up and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Ruth Laro, and I live on 141 Four Rod Road in Kensington. I am here as a concerned citizen regarding gun safety, especially in the school system here in Berlin. I'd like to speak to you today about sending a letter to all parents and guardians of Berlin students, reminding them to make sure their firearms are secured and stored safely and out of reach of children. Last month, I sent Mr. Benigni an email and carbon copied, I believe all of you received that. And I made this request with an attachment of a sample letter that could be used, to start the letter. Since then, I have been in contact with Mr. Benigni and his assistant, and actually I heard from him today. I also would like to thank Melissa Gibbons. She's here on the Board of Ed, thank you, because she did acknowledge my email and mentioned that there is a law in Connecticut that requires the safe storage of firearms if you have children in your home. Exactly. And it's important that every parent in Connecticut is made aware of this law and also be reminded regularly to check how their gun is stored. This critical information is included in this letter, this sample letter that I sent to you. There are also relevant statistics mentioned in the letter. One such statistic suggests that many parents believe that their children have never handled firearms unsupervised when in fact they actually have. And this statistic is roughly the number of people here. Say that there are 10 parents, and between 2 and 3 of those parents think that their children have never touched an unsupervised firearm. And if you ask the children, 3 of those children, 2 to 3 of them would say, oh yes, we have. So this is an important thing to consider. Also, the safe handling of these firearms, not our topic though. On a personal note, I recently was having a conversation with a friend and this topic came up. My friend stated that she had nephews and nieces that visit her home and just remembered that her husband had a gun, but she didn't know where it was. So this prompted her to check with him and make sure that the gun was stored safely, and it was. And she was telling me the story about how she was thinking about this. She said that, you know how kids are. They snoop around looking for Christmas gifts and maybe birthday presents and that kind of thing. And what if they came across a firearm in the process? What if it was not locked? What if it was loaded? It would be a very dangerous situation. So parents should also ask about guns in the homes of people that their children visit. This includes relatives, babysitters, and friends. Is that my time?
It is, yes.
Can I just round it up?
Wrap
here?
it up, yep.
Okay. So this is also covered in the letter. Reminding parents and guardians of children in the Berlin schools to safely store their guns is a critical issue that I hope you will consider. And setting the letter also contains a parent's legal obligation along with relevant studies, statistics, and additional resources, and is an effective way to communicate with this information. Thank you for listening to me. I do appreciate all you do for the children in this town. I have also some copies of the letter here. Again, I'll give them to the secretary if you wanted to look over. It's sort of like an unbranded letter. It's not representing any particular organization. Thank you.
Thank you. We could add that to a future board meeting as a discussion, correct?
Sure.
Okay, we'll have that on a future board meeting as a discussion so the board can discuss that. At this point, we're not able to add to our board agenda tonight, but that can be a discussion of the board after they go through the material. Anyone else? Yep.
So I wasn't, hi, Mary Ellen Maloney, High Road, Berlin.
What number?
Oh, 1343 High Road.
Thank you.
Okay. So I wasn't really planning on speaking tonight. I was just going to be here to support my friend Ruth. But, listening to her speak, it reminded me of a very personal story regarding gun safety, because I really don't see what harm there is in sending home a gentle reminders for people to keep their firearms secure. I wouldn't see no reason you wouldn't want to do that. Pediatricians always spoke about it during kids' physicals, at least my pediatrician did. I don't know if anybody else did. And there was a sign up in the office, keep firearms secure. But to give you a perfect example of something that really bad could have happened in my own life, I was 6 years old. My father was a Boston police officer, worked in Dorchester, and he used to always lock his gun in his locker. But my aunt and uncle and cousins were all here from Ohio, and he was rushing home so that they could all go out to dinner. So he brought his gun home, and he put it under his pillow. So I'm the youngest of 5, plus my 3 cousins from Ohio. And when my parents were out, because I was the spoiled baby, I would sleep in their bed until they got home. And I went into my parents' bed, and I pulled the covers down under the pillow, found the gun, and walked out into the living room holding the gun. And my cousin, who's 10 years older than me, just even recently said, "I will never forget you holding that gun, pointing it at the living room full of all of us." So, no harm in a gentle reminder. And I'm sure it was unloaded, right? We hope so. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to approach the board this evening? Great. Well, thank you for approaching the board this evening. So we are going to be moving on to our next agenda item, the consent agenda. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I'll move to approve consent agenda as presented.
So we have a motion by Adam, a second by Matt. Is there any discussion around the consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Vote carries 7-0. Right, moving on to new business of the meeting. We have a ruler presentation, so I will turn this over to our superintendent to discuss this presentation.
We're very happy to have Dr. Jessica Hoffman with us here this evening. She's the Director of Adolescent Initiatives and Research Scientist at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. I was fortunate probably 4 years ago to go to the center at Yale and to work with Mark Breckett with representatives from around the country. We were fortunate to have Jessica with us this year to speak to Ruler to our entire staff at the district. She did a phenomenal job, and we thought with everything going on and it being an initiative across the district, that'd be great to have her here with you this evening so you can have an opportunity to hear right from Jessica about the center and hopefully to gain a little more clarity about what Ruler is and what our goals are for Ruler. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Jessica. And as long as you hold the microphone, that'd be great. Thank you.
Where's the least awkward place to stand? How about right here?
That's fine.
Is this good? All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. As was mentioned, my name is Jessica. I'm the Director of Adolescent Initiatives at the center. I was a co-creator of Ruler content. Dr. Mark Brackett is my boss, so he's our most dynamic speaker, but I will do my best. I just want to mention a couple of things, which is that in addition to kind of my job title, I want you to, I want to be a human tonight. So this is me with my family. I have 2 young boys who are in the Woodbridge school system. We have a little girl on the way. So thank you for being part of showing up for teachers, showing up for students, being involved in education. It's huge. I'm also a horseback rider, so if we have any horse fans in the audience, we can connect afterwards. So what I want to do tonight is talk a little bit about what Ruler is. But the thing about Ruler is you can read about it, but it's about feelings. And so the tone of my talk is gonna be a little bit different than the rest of a board meeting, because I want you to get a sense of what it feels like in addition to what it is. So I wanted to introduce one of our tools, which is the mood meter. Are people familiar with the mood meter already? Okay, so the mood meter, right, has 2 axes, pleasantness along the x-axis from unpleasant to pleasant, and then energy is on the y-axis. This is based on the circumplex model of emotion, which has been around since 1980. And basically it allows us to plot how we're feeling at any given time, but it also allows us to calibrate among each other, right? So that when we use a feeling word or say where we are in this space, we all have a sense of what that means. So it helps us to build a common language around our emotions. So I'll ask you to just take a second and think about where you fall tonight. So you'll give yourself a number on the x-axis, the y-axis. You'll land in one of the 4 quadrants. And then there's a couple, samplings of words up there, but there are many more. There's about 2,000 feeling words in English and then many, many more in other native languages. Give yourself a feeling word once you've found your spot. So who do we have that's in the yellow on this rainy evening? No one? We have green. Greens in the room? A lot of greens. Anybody in the red? Red. And where are our blue friends tonight? No? No one? All right. I'd say I'm also somewhere in the red because you're kind of an intimidating group, but low red, low red. So we ask people to do this, right? It's a real quick way you could do a check-in at a faculty meeting, at the beginning of a department meeting. It's also something that a lot of educators have in the entrance to their classrooms. As students come in, they can check in either anonymously or with our younger students, we have magnets with their faces on it. It gives you a quick read of who you have in the room because generally you will have kind of a whole range of people coming in. This represents the whole range of human emotions. In the ruler approach, there are no bad emotions. There are behaviors that we don't love, right? But there are no bad emotions. And so we just want to know who we have at any given time so that we can adjust our teaching or our leading or our parenting accordingly. Make sense? Okay. This is a tool that helps us build a set of skills around self-awareness, right? So often when we ask people, was it hard? Did anybody have a hard time picking the right word, the right feeling word for how you are right now? Sometimes people have a hard time picking the right word. There's some reasons why, right? Sometimes we're feeling two things at once. I'm excited to be here, but I'm anxious about driving home in the rain. So where do I put myself, right? Sometimes people say, well, we don't practice this, right? What are the social scripts in our society? If I am passing you in the hallway and I say, hey, good morning, how are you? What are you supposed to say? Good, right? You're not supposed to give me your real authentic answer. You're supposed to say good. So we want to think about how we can break that script because that's what we're modeling for our students. We want to know if our students are struggling or suffering. We want to know if our educators are struggling. But first, we've got to create an environment that's safe enough that when I say, hey, how are you today? You can give me your real answer, right? Okay, so how do we create that kind of environment? That's the first step of Ruler, is to make it a safe space for people to be able to share their real feelings. And then we can move on to how are we going to regulate and manage those feelings? How are they going to work in our classrooms? The science shows that emotions matter for basically everything, is what this list says, right? They matter for our attention, memory, and learning. If you're worried about what's going to happen later today, it's very hard to pay attention, to focus, for any of that information to make it into your head. They matter for our relationships, right? Does anybody have a coworker who's kind of always in a bad mood? They're like, not, right? Like, you're like, oh, that's who I'm going to take to coffee today, right? Like, no, they're, right? They matter for our relationships, right? They matter for our decision making. We did a study out of our center years ago where we had sample essays from 7th graders. And we asked a set of teachers to journal about a bad day for 5 minutes and a set of teachers to journal about a good day for 5 minutes. In the lab, it's called a mood induction, right? And then we had all those teachers grade the same essays. The teachers who had journaled about a bad day graded the essays a full letter grade lower than the teachers who had journaled about a good day. And we asked them, do you think that that journaling thing we made you do had a difference in how you graded? And 87% of them said no way. They had no self-awareness that their mood had had an impact, right? No, I'm impartial when I grade. I use a rubric, right? Right? So we had them do it again, all different sample, right? And this time we didn't even help them regulate. We just explained, right, kind of how that works, and the entire grading effect went away. So even just raising our awareness of how moods impact our decision making, right, our relationships, the way we judge a situation, the way we interpret something, can start to mitigate the effect. Everybody with me? All right, I'm going quick because I got a lot of things to say. So the good news is that we're not at the mercy of our feelings, right? Historically, emotions were thought of as something that make you irrational, illogical, push those away, right? You have an emotion side of your brain and a logic side of your brain. That is all debunked, right? We have the ability to use our emotions to support our decision making, to enhance our relationships, right? To help students to engage and be interested in the classroom, right? If it's content that's meaningful, that they're passionate about, so we want to think about how we can become someone who can channel our emotions for our benefit, as opposed to someone who is at the mercy of how we're feeling. This is what's called emotional intelligence, right? It was coined, depends on who you ask, but according to Yale, it was coined in 1990 by Peter Salovey, who's now the president of the university. Back then he was a psychologist. He was studying memory and what impacts people's memory. So he would give them a list of words and then induce a mood state, anxiety, boredom, happiness, and then ask them to remember the list of words. And what he found was that different emotions led to different abilities to remember the list. But there was a lot of noise, or what they thought was noise, right? Some people could still remember the list even though you'd made them anxious. Some people couldn't. And they started to, him and his partner, Jack Meyer, who's out of the University of New Hampshire, they started to wonder, what if it's not noise? What if some people are better at managing the emotion and doing the task anyway than others? And they named that emotional intelligence. And they wrote a paper in 1990 that almost nobody read except Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book in 1995 called Emotional Intelligence, which everybody read. But it brought emotional intelligence onto the scene. And the trick is, Daniel Goleman's book kind of makes it this silver bullet, this everything. And it's a great book. But what we want to do is stick to the science of what actually is it, right? Because it's not like the solution to all your problems, but it is extremely helpful for getting through your life. So what we've done is come up with the acronym RULER, which is the name of the ruler approach, that outlines what we think are the 5 skills of emotional intelligence. The first R is to recognize emotions in yourself and others, right? Be able to read people's vocal cues, their body language, their voice, their facial expressions, and to be able to recognize in yourself what's happening with your heart rate, what's happening with your thinking, to understand what's causing the emotion. Where is it coming from, right? What led to it? Because we often misattribute our feelings, especially like little kids will do this. Labeling our emotions accurately. This means we have to have a large and nuanced emotion vocabulary. We have to go beyond fine and good and okay, right, to have lots of feelings. Also, people tend to say things like, I'm very excited. There's another word for very excited, right? Something like thrilled. So can we push ourselves to use the right word? Expressing our emotions effectively is the E. So expressing emotion isn't a skill, but expressing it effectively for your situation is, right? So this is also where we can think about with our students and our educators who have to kind of code switch between home and school or between different parts of their lives, right? Reading a room and figuring out how and when to express is a whole set of skills. Some of us are lucky enough that kind of everything aligns, and some of us have a lot more work to do. And then we all carry with us display rules that come with our culture around who can cry and who can't, and who can be angry and who can't, right? So we can think about kind of all of those pieces of all the layers that go into expressing. And then of course these all culminate in regulating our emotions with helpful strategies that allow us to be our most productive selves, our most creative selves, to achieve whatever our goals may be. All right, all that make sense? So that's kind of the theory behind it. I want to back up for 1 second and place RULER in the context of social emotional learning. So in 2019, if you Googled SEL, which is social emotional learning, you got 4 million results. I did it again on Saturday because I was curious. We know this number because we did this, we've been tracking it, but I did it again on Saturday. What do you think, how many results are there now as of Saturday?
13 million.
We got 15 million,
13 million.
Up. As of,
Oh, wow.
there are 1.2 billion results. So what this says is that everyone is talking about SEL. Everyone is confused about SEL, and not all of it's good, which you've probably heard, right? There's a whole discourse happening out there. And so what I want to do is define what I think SEL means and then kind of place RULER in that context for you. So my favorite definition is from David Adams, who's the CEO of Urban Assembly, which is a consortium of schools in New York City. And his definition is this: social emotional learning is the process by which children and adults learn how to solve inter- and intrapersonal problems in order to maximize their ability to flourish across environments. Right? So it's a set of social and emotional skills that people can learn that help them navigate everyday challenges, interpersonal problems that you may come across. That's it. We also have the president and CEO of CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning. She was asked what her definition of SEL is, and she wrote, social emotional learning is the reason my son loves school again and can focus on learning. It's the relationship that he has built with a supportive teacher and the way he has developed skills to process his emotions, make friends, practice curiosity, and solve problems. Okay, so there are a whole host of SEL initiatives, programs, kits, whatever you want to call them, out there. Ruler is a systemic, evidence-based approach to SEL that's based in the science of emotional intelligence. So there are programs that are kernels. You may have heard of like the kernel approach, where there's just little things you kind of throw in randomly to class. They make for good Pinterest photos, right? We are not that. We are a systemic approach, which means it's a whole school. It's system-wide. It has to be something we all buy into and believe in, that all emotions matter, that emotions are part of learning, that it's a set of skills that we can build in ourselves and each other to have a more safe and supportive and productive community. We are evidence-based, which means that we continue to conduct randomized controlled trials. We conduct some of them. We get external evaluators to evaluate us, right, which is even more rigorous. We work with the American Institutes for Research are running trials, as well as the University of Virginia is running a trial right now, looking at the actual outcomes of Ruler, what the science shows works. And we follow the science of emotional intelligence, right, which says that SEL programs that work are sequenced, right? They're not kind of random, and they're not just on Tuesday, right? They are, they build on each other preschool through high school. Ruler also follows a phased approach where we start with the adults, right? Because what we found over time was that if you ask for changes in the classroom, you have to have adults who feel ready, confident, competent in the material. And we also, no initiative, I don't care if it's SEL or math or science or anything, works if you have high teacher turnover, high teacher burnout. So we have to care about the well-being of the adults first. Right? You probably heard like put on your own oxygen mask and these kinds of things. That's what we're going for. Then we move to student and family engagement. And then finally we have schools that do incredible things, innovative, creative. They really make it their own. We just had our 4th National Ruler Conference. I'm not sure if Berlin was present, you guys were there. And we hear from schools all over the country just doing amazing work. We had about 1,400 people in attendance. So the Ruler staff development has a couple of parts. It starts with a 6-week online training. It used to be 2 days in person. I was just in a meeting today where we're planning our first in-person training again for November. We're so excited to have people back on campus, getting excited, connecting, and not doing these online Zoom things anymore. And then we have an entire online platform called Ruler Online, full of more content really than you probably want. And then we move to the classroom curricula. For early childhood, there are 13 feeling word units that kind of work their way around the mood meter. For elementary school, there are 108 units, which sounds like a ton, but across the grades, it doesn't work out to that many. And we start to introduce what we call core routines, checking in on the mood meter, taking meta moments, breathing breaks, community circles. The middle school content has 20 lessons per grade for 6th, 7th, and 8th, continues to incorporate those core routines and starts to think about projects that can be used across disciplines, across the content areas. And then for high school, very similarly, there are 20 lessons per year. Those come in both a kind of an interactive and a printable format. And really the focus is on autonomy and independence in your emotion regulation, your contribution back to the school, and who you want to be when you're not here anymore, right? So part of Ruler is building a school that feels like a family. And as we move into middle and high school, a second part of it is, do you have the individual skills to successfully launch from our school into your college and career? The Ruler approach uses 4 Ruler tools. the charter is a contract on how we all want to feel when we're here and what we can do to help each other feel that way. So kind of instead of a list of rules, it's a list of feelings. And then not what we're not going to do, but what we are going to do for each other. The mood meter we already saw a little bit of. The meta moment is our 4-step process for handling big feelings, being able to stop, pause, breathe, picture your best self, and then behave in a way that aligns with who you want to be. And then the blueprint is for those conflicts that arise even though we were using all the other tools. So the blueprint hopefully gets used less and less as we're living the charter, raising our self-awareness with the mood meter, and then pausing and having fewer moments where we regret how we behaved. We should have very few conflicts that need to be resolved. These tools all are used by the staff and faculty first before they're introduced in the classroom. So ruler is a real slow burn. It's a marathon, right? We want the educators to experience the benefits of the tools well before they are asked to change anything in their classroom. So it's over time, right? We're not flipping a switch here. Just to give you a couple examples of what it looks like so you can really picture, these are some real life charters. The one on the left is a faculty charter, the one in the middle is an elementary school charter, and then this is a high school charter from the High School for Fashion Industries in New York City. These are a couple examples of how the mood meter has been used. All the way on the left is a librarian who pulled out different books that map onto different feeling words on the mood meter. In the middle, we had Joel Barlow High School, which is, where are they? Reading? Yeah. They did they looked at Hamlet's soliloquy and they cut out couplets and they mapped them onto the mood meter, and so the students could visually see sort of his spiral into sanity. There was a mood meter redraw contest as kind of a formative assessment at Bridgeport, Central High School in Bridgeport. And then this is maybe my favorite, is this is an English teacher who was teaching personification, right? You were gonna teach personification anyway. This is not something added on to your teaching load, right? You're gonna do that unit on personification anyway, but instead of personifying trees or chairs or whatever, they did feeling words. And this 4th grader, I thought, wrote the best thing I've ever seen in my life, which was about anger. Anger lives by himself in a cabin far away. His sweaters are scratchy, the room is too cold, his tea is too hot. Other people think he wants to be alone, but secretly he's lonely. The meta moment. We have over here one of our schools in Mexico from Prepa Tech in Guadalajara. They made best self collages. And then again, we had a meta moment redraw contest, which kind of also functions to look as a knowledge check. And the students made some really amazing meta moment posters that fit in better at their high school than our little toaster child guy. This was just at our ruler conference, a school in, it's Manchester Essex Regional Middle School. They have what's called a Zen zone where the students can take meta moments, but on your way into the Zen zone, you have to check in on the mood meter, and on your way out of the Zen zone, you check in on the mood meter. And what they found in this latest academic year was this, which was the light blue is when you go in, the black is when you go out. So effectively no one left still in the red. We see a huge decrease in blue and a big increase in people leaving in the green and the yellow. So they're starting to collect this kind of data to show that it's really making a difference for their students. A little bit of the science and then I'll wrap it up. I totally lost track of time, but I got excited. When we look at school climate, right, a healthy school climate, one where people feel safe, supported, and like they belong, we see fewer negative emotions. This is in our educators, fewer reports of negative emotions. And those fewer reports of negative emotions predict fewer reports of burnout, fewer stress-related absences. The last couple you can if you have little dollar signs dinging in your head, fewer stress-related absences, right? Calling out, not because you're sick, not because your kids are sick, not because it's a snow day, just because you can't go today, right? Fewer sleep troubles, fewer mental health problems, and then not on this slide, but in this study, there were fewer alcohol and drug use reports, and we can also predict people's BMI. So it's not just you picked education, tough it out, it's a tough one. It is affecting people's health, their physical and their mental health, and they're leaving the profession, not the school, the profession, right? So this is urgent. When we look at our youth, right, we can see those who perform not as well on tests of emotional intelligence. Remember, that's recognizing emotions in faces, having a large vocabulary, having a toolbox of regulation strategies. We see a whole host of differences between those students who have higher EI. As a district, you can think about, you'll be able to start to see this, because as your elementary school students who have had ruler for years move into the middle school teachers will tell you that it's like a whole different set of sixth graders, right? And if you've got schools that have ruler and don't have ruler, you will be able to tell the difference between the sixth graders who had 5 years of feeling words and the ones who didn't. Finally, among the educators, we see higher sensitivity and empathy. They are rated as more effective both by their supervisors and by their students. We talked about the less stress and burnout, greater job satisfaction, more positive classroom climates, and their students perform better. This is an interesting one. When we look at leader EI, these are the principals. So the word cloud is how the educators in the school feel, their top feeling words. And we broke it into leaders who had high emotional intelligence and leaders who had low emotional intelligence. So look at this. This is how the educators feel depending on the principal's emotional intelligence. So ruler is about how leaders lead, teachers teach, students learn, and families parent. The whole package, right? And then finally, when we look at those randomized controlled trials I mentioned of ruler, what we see is this. The students are less anxious and depressed. They have higher EI skills, which we would hope for, fewer attention problems, better academic performance. There are a number of meta-analyses now that include ruler as well as other SEL approaches that show a 9 to 11% gain in academic performance for schools that have SEL, and greater leadership skills. Our teachers are more engaging, supportive, and effective. They stay in their classrooms. And the classrooms and schools have more positive climates and less bullying. So with that, I don't know if we have time for this or not. You guys tell me.
How long is the clip?
It's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
Oh, please, go ahead.
Play it.
I don't know if there's
3
sound.
minutes.
It's got some students and teachers direct sort of me.
I think after having ruler come in, I've grown so confident and just like what I've always seen myself to be.
Ruler asserts that all emotions matter. All emotions. It's the full range of emotions that makes us human, and it's the full range of emotions that helps us to get through life. Ruler is a systemic approach to social and emotional learning. We want to give school districts the opportunity to build a common language for social and emotional learning.
Through ruler, I've been learning how to share different emotions with different people and how to express my emotions with positive energy.
Too many kids are holding it all in, and we're seeing a rise in anxiety and stress in children that doesn't need to be there.
They're really thinking about cyberbullying and body shaming as opposed to academics.
If we are all working together on our social emotional language, we are making the school a safer, more caring, and joyful place to be for all children.
Research shows that kids who go through this kind of training are less stressed. They do have less depression.
Students are having better conversations with each other. Discipline incidents have decreased. Students are able to be more creative. It really supports the development of the whole child in every way.
Ruler is a set of 5 key skills that are the underlying skills of emotional intelligence. Recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, regulating emotions. We used a set of anchor tools. Tools to help people build greater self-awareness, to build a better emotional vocabulary.
The tools have helped make our students more aware of their classmates.
We're trying to give everyone the opportunity to become more emotionally skilled.
Try to empathize with the other character as well. How do you think the other person felt? And how did the other person show and handle their feelings?
Ruler begins by training the adults in schools to shift their mindsets around the value and importance of emotions.
Just teaching them the ruler skills and the anchor tools and using it in everything we did with each other.
Because educators, like kids, come from many different places. And so really getting them to take a look and reflect upon their own practices. What are they doing and how do they resolve the issues that they are feeling within?
We really are investing in making sure that all of the adults are all embracing this approach so that every student can be successful.
With this, you're going to be able to teach.
We also work with families because we want children and their parents or caretakers to have the same language.
There's no doubt that the ruler approach allows for enhanced learning.
This is an approach that is for everyone. It helps everyone learn strategies to help them manage their lives so they can be healthier, happier, and more effective. My real hope is that every school would embed these principles into the way leaders lead, teachers teach, and students learn.
Okay. So we're just going to leave you with this reflection. We won't do it, but I'll just leave you with this question, which was, we're talking about giving our children an emotion expression education, right? We're talking about how they interpret the feelings that they feel, right? Whether they're judging themselves, this is I'm good, this is bad, I shouldn't feel this way, right? We're talking about how they then share that with the world, both how they express it and how they regulate it. That's what we're talking about, right? And so I want you to just take a second and think about, what did you learn? What was your emotion expression education? And your answer might be none, right? But what did you learn about how emotions are supposed to be felt, how emotions are supposed to be expressed? And what do you hope we keep from what you learned? Or potentially, what do you hope is very different from what you learned, right? What do we want to pass on? What messages are we ready to throw out about women who cry, or men who cry, or whatever you want to, right? You pick. And with that, I'll just leave you with this, right? From the great Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I'll just say thank you again for showing up for the kids and for the educators, and for making me feel welcome.
Thank you. Anyone from the board have anything that they would like to ask, say, contribute, comment?
I would just like to say that I had the opportunity to see Ruler in action on Friday at Hubbard. Mr. Souza was nice enough to take us around, and we went into Mrs. Rainey's room, and it was a snapshot of what goes on, and I was really impressed with it. I thought the kids were calm. She was very calm, and it seemed as though they were had already caught on to all of it. They were very responsive to her when she would ask them. They just had come in from recess, so she said, how are you all feeling? And they put their finger on the mood meter, and it was interesting. It was actually good to see it in action. It's, as you said, you can read about it, it just doesn't make sense when you're reading all this information. So I was really happy I had the opportunity to go into the school and actually see it firsthand. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm going to say something similar to Gina. Had the pleasure to go into Hubbard, and as my brain works as an artist, I'm just a visual person, and same thing, I read about it, trying to grasp and understand, but seeing the kids actually use it. I know that we went in a third grade classroom, so these are students that have had this, for 3 years. So like Gina was saying, it's amazing. It just came natural, right? And I think with the connecting and the purpose of it, but like you said, in order for this to work, everybody needs to be on the same page and have the same investment. So it will be very interesting how the district decides as the teachers are being trained this year. Because like you said, it's a gradual, and I can see that, you have they even had, fifth and fourth graders, but now we're in middle school, but it's not quite at the middle school yet. So that must be kind of interesting for the kids because they've had that for a couple years. So I'm just hoping that it's going to be a progression instead of I don't want it to be you know, all, I don't know, like I would like to see it work as it has obviously in Hubbard. They've had the time, you know, to gradually work, see how things work within individual classrooms and how the teachers utilize it with their best self too, and be able to work with their kids. And it's not like they're following very strict lessons, curriculum that everybody has to do. They truly cater it to each individual class. So that was really great to see.
And I really enjoyed the observation, and I thought that the thing that took me back the most was that I think the students, it was a third grade class, they'd come back from recess, so you'd typically expect them to be pretty upbeat, and all of them are, you know, excited and in the class and settling in, and part of the lesson is, you know, to identify your emotion, and then the teacher prompts them to ask to elaborate on where they fall on the mood meter. And I was actually surprised to see how willing the students were, willing to share, you know, a sad emotion or what have you. Like one student had shared with the class that it was the anniversary of his dog's death, and he was just feeling down and out that day. And another student shared that she was tired, and, you know, because her sister kept her up. And it was surprising to me to see the students share those kind of emotions, which I think typically in society you're kind of geared to suppress or not exactly share, kind of like in the example you provided. Hey, how you doing? You doing good? Oh yeah, you know. But you know, you never really know how people are doing. So I was surprised, pleasantly surprised to see how eager the students were willing to share their emotions. I also am just curious what the program kind of looks like when it's rolled out into the middle school and high school level grades. You know, when we observe the third grade students, they've kind of been in this program a bit. They come in, they point at the mood meter, they go along with it, so to speak. But I am just curious what it kind of looks like at the high school level and how it's incorporated, because I can see, you know, older students kind of being introduced to it and saying, you know, being a little defiant, like, that's stupid, you know. So that's my only curiosity. But I was overall pleasantly surprised and pleased with what I saw in the classroom in the ruler program. So thank you.
Do you want a response on the high school question, or I don't know, your
Middle school, high school,
Yeah. So after elementary, obviously it moves out of the classroom and becomes even more whole school, right? Because you don't have one class where you can have one class charter. So we tend to see grade charters or whole school charters. And then if you're going to do the ruler lessons, they have to go somewhere. I think most often they're put into an advisory or into health, though I've seen them put into social studies, we've seen them put into English, I've seen them put into PE. We've seen schools divide them up. So that's something where ruler comes with coaching, right, sessions. We can support each school in figuring out where exactly those sorts of things would fit. We still ask whether you're someone who's tasked with teaching the actual lessons, that all educators are versed in the tools, because students will say, I'm in the red, I'm in the blue, I need a meta moment, and you can't like have no earthly idea what that means. The other piece that's different in high school is that we ask that in addition to teaching, so there's two parts to, right? There's teaching emotional intelligence, and there's emotionally intelligent teaching. Which is every subject, right? How are we feeling about the test tomorrow? What can we do, right? There's evidence that having students take 30 seconds to do a breathing exercise before you hand out the quiz is going to make a difference in how well they do on that quiz. There's also evidence to the reverse, that if you try to raise the stakes and raise the pressure, this is the most important, people will do worse, right? No one rises like that. That's not how pressure works. People think it is, but it's not. And so there are things like that that every teacher can know and start to use in their classroom, regardless of classroom content. We took some schools from Fairfax, Virginia to some schools in New York that were further ahead of them in ruler, and they asked the same question. They said, how do you kind of like sell this to high schoolers who are gonna think it's goofy? And the students said, you have to be brave and you have to be patient, because it's gonna take a little while. And then they said, if they're making fun of it, it means they learned the content, right? If they have the ability to make jokes about it, then they heard it. And I was a clinician before I worked at the center, and that's just incredibly true. It was like, you would say things you have absolutely no idea if any of it sunk in, but it did. And it comes back later. So be brave and be patient.
I just have,
Sorry.
I just have one more question. What is the typical recommendation from the ruler program as to how much lesson time should be dedicated, say, on a weekly basis? I know we were told, like in the third grade classroom, they were doing, I think, 2 30-minute lessons a week or 40-minute lessons a week. What does that translate to at the middle school level, high school level? What's the general
Yeah,
recommendation?
so middle and high school, there are 20 lessons to do each year. So if you're going to roll those out, that's less than once a week that it would fit into, right? So, or maybe it's even a semester, and then you've got another thing you're going to do the other semester. And so really the power of it is going to be in all the other whole school parts. Yes, there are these lessons, but we have schools that call us and they're like, we did all 80 lessons, now what? And it's like, they haven't changed a thing about their culture. So if you're going to do one or the other, the culture shift, right, to believing that all emotions matter, and that this is going to be a place where you can authentically share, that's going to be, right, that's the powerful part.
So I'm not a plant, but I do believe in the ruler program. In full disclosure to you, I work at the other university in New Haven, training school psychologists and school counselors and clinical mental health counselors. So I have seen this in action elsewhere. I was not able to join these folks at Hubbard, but and like I said, this is not necessarily a plug for Ruler, but moreover a plug for the importance of teaching children and adolescents and adults to use appropriate language and to talk about their emotions. So to be able to identify it, to develop that self-awareness, to engage with others, to express what it is that they're feeling, so that our children, our adults within our communities feel safe and feel supported and feel a sense of belonging, because ultimately those feelings prevent crises from emerging, from behavioral problems from emerging. And so whatever time is spent on the front end investing in teaching these lessons is saved on the back end in addressing behavioral problems and crises. So I think it's wonderful that we have Ruler here and that our community is engaged in this. It's an important thing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
I have a question. So, you know, as I'm listening to this and seeing it, I mean, obviously, coming from a different generation where feelings are not really talked about in school, I mean,
We're the same generation, Adam.
when I grew up, it was just, you know, in school, you did your work, you went home, played a sport, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're talking about this, and I can see from an elementary school, a young age for kids, this is very positive. How is it for the teachers that have been teaching for 20 years already, or something like that? I mean, you know, you think about just a different way of thinking, and I'm curious how the teachers are relating to this and buying into the entire program.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think one of the things we know about emotions, and I recall going to school, and this wasn't part of it. What we know about emotions is that when you try to, this idea that you could leave them at the door, it just doesn't work. They leak out anyway. And so wouldn't it be better to just know up front that someone in your classroom was struggling, rather than after you've been pushing them for a little while, they blow up, right, as we were saying, and then you find out that they were having a really tough day. Wouldn't you rather know that from the beginning? So those are kind of because we're not as good at compartmentalizing as we think we are. And so those emotions are leaking, they're showing up, they're getting in the way. And so we want to find a better way around that. How can we harness them to our advantage? I think when we think about our teachers who are a little more hesitant, you know, really have their practice down and are a little hesitant, often if you start to talk about relationships and you talk about, do you have students who come back and thank you that you're the reason that they are a chemist, that they decided that they could, you know, do X, Y, and Z, that you're the first person who believed in them in math or whatever it might be, they hold on to that. And so those teachers are doing this already. They're not calling it this, but they're doing it. Our good and our excellent teachers are doing SEL out of instinct, but not every teacher has it. You would think, you know, I think we assume that every educator is like good with people. but it turns out that we all can be better and we all need skills at that. And so it's not as...
I heard some laughing going on over there. I'm sorry.
Especially in middle and high school, right? There's this terrible saying that elementary school teachers teach students and high school teachers teach subjects, right? And they also teach students. And so helping them to kind of see that it's about the relationship building. I was just talking with some students at our ruler conference, and I said, what do you wish that adults knew about why SEL is so important, even when you're a teenager? And all the students on the panel agreed that it was about relationships. It's easier to get up and go to school if there is someone there who believes in me. It is easier to persist in a hard class where I'm not doing well if I think that the teacher is invested in me. And so it's those kind of communications that make a difference.
I will say, I believe it was last fall, I don't think it was this past fall, when I was at Hubbard, I saw the class contracts happening in various classrooms. So over a year ago, like a year and a half ago, right? Was it last? It wasn't this, but the charters, yeah. And I saw it at the kindergarten level, and then I saw it all the way up, because that must have been the day where the classes were doing it. And it was so cool to see the investment in students and see what students thought was so important for their safe learning environment. And in the elementary school classroom, you know, I think when kids are learning how to write and they're becoming writers, they need to be able to write about feelings. A lot of their writing prompts are around that. That's one thing that they can all relate to. And that's, you know, been around for a long time. That's not anything new, but I think that helps them, and then it brings that piece into it. But it was so cool to see what the kids were coming up with as their non-negotiables. And, you know, so this year in my high school, which is in district, and I do not believe it's through Ruler, we had to create class contracts. It was like a school initiative. And so I took what I saw, you know, at Hubbard with Al's classes, and I really invested everything in it. And I will say, you know, the first half of the year when I had my students there, they were so invested in those contracts because they came up with them. And, you know, so though it's not the Ruler piece, but it's like what makes kids feel safe at school and what helps them learn and what's a supportive environment. And, you know, high schoolers up through seniors, 18-year-olds bought into it. And it was so funny when, you know, when kids weren't following the contract, they were calling each other out and having that level of accountability. And I know with Ruler, from what I saw, it's done it, you know, at a much better level because I witnessed kindergartners participating in it, and it was really, really cool to see. So, you know, I just wanted to give Hubbard the shout out for that. And for any board member, you know, that is interested in seeing a lesson, please definitely reach out to Brian. He can set that up. Definitely go through him for that. This Friday's visit was not extended to all board members, just so everyone knows. It was last minute in nature. Everyone has a lot going on. And, you know, apologies if you feel excluded, but just know that if you would like to go see a Ruler lesson, Brian is more than happy to set that up for you. Just reach out directly to him.
I just want to thank you, Jessica, for coming this evening and spending time with us and really framing Ruler from even a different level for the board, as well as for any of the public that's watching. It's been great to be part of it, and I look forward to what we can continue to do here in Berlin Public Schools. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can do one more time. Okay, thank you everyone for that. We are moving on to the Board of Education budget update. So I'm going to have Superintendent Benigni report out on the adopted budget, and then we can follow up with our discussion at the F&O committee, and then continue the discussion from there. So sure. I'll turn it over to you.
At this point, there's not much to announce about the budget, as you're aware the board voted on the budget at the last meeting, and the budget was raised. I know that the Board of Finance has met since then. There has not been a direct conversation. We hope to meet this evening with the mayor and the Board of Finance chairperson, Sal Bordenero, but our meeting is running late, so we're going to reschedule that. But there's not much more to update on the budget at this point, except for that the budget was increased to 5.84%. And at this time, we're going to wait and see what the Board of Finance is looking to do. Just for the public understanding, the Board of Finance will then determine a number. That number then goes to the town council. The town council at that point can either decrease or keep that number and pass it forward to the referendum to a vote. The town council cannot increase it. So whatever number the Board of Finances sends to the town council, as I said, there's only two options, either decrease or remain the same. So we're hoping to have conversations before that with the Board of Finance.
So I know, our previous discussion at the start of the meeting, during audience to citizen, Brian had spoken out that 4.23% is needed to maintain just status quo contractual obligations.
Correct.
And the board then added in, so the superintendent came forward with some cuts from his original proposal. The board worked together. We had a 7-2 vote around a 5.84% because his budget did represent some cuts that he thought could be supported. The board, voted otherwise. So, we did have an F&O committee meeting last week. But I think we need to talk a little bit more about what those cuts are going to look like. And I don't know, Matt, do you want to speak to anything, or Adam, or anyone else? But I think now we can have a conversation and charge the superintendent.
Just a clarification, Brian, if I remember correctly, the 4.23 and then the next number that we've added some staff back in. That included staff that was in some grants that were moved into the operating budget, correct?
Mhm.
Because I don't want there to be the impression that the teachers got a 4-point-something% contractual increase, but we did move some positions in, which to our community member that came and asked the question is otherwise would have had to been cut from cut out of the district, and it would have impacted programming that we are offering today. Just point of clarification.
That's correct. The only increase that was done to the budget was staffing positions that were scheduled to be cut to get to the 4.84%.
Okay. So with that said, I think that we need to, I think the F&O committee needs to meet again to discuss what the landscape looks like if we have different levels of funding coming from the town, right? So if the town comes back and says, we're going to give you 4%, well, that's 0.23. What does that mean? So that we can have a conversation and we know what that landscape looks like. So I think that needs to be the focus of that committee meeting.
Do you think prior to that committee meeting, Brian and Ashley should develop a list of what a 4% is going to look like, a 3%, a 2%, and all the cuts associated, or should we be doing that in our meeting?
Well, I don't think that we're in a position to decide what it's going to look like. I think that Brian has to kind of lay it out in those levels, right? So I think that from my perspective as chair of F&O, I would ask Brian to give me, to give us, like, this is what 4% looks like, this is what 3.75 looks like, this is what 3.5, and I would take it, down to 2%.
Perfect, thank you.
Just so that we have an idea of how drastic it is.
I would agree with that. Adam, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Maybe 2% is too low, but.
Well, no, I
Three.
would.
We know that we need to be 3 or better, so take it to 3.
Okay, Adam, what were you gonna say?
No, I concur. I'm hoping we don't go too low, but I think anything less than 3 is going to be pretty devastating.
Yes.
Anyone else want to have anything they want to add? So we will schedule an F&O committee meeting. We can have Debbie work on that tomorrow. It will most likely, it will be on Zoom, I would guess, right? We can let the board.
Seems like it's going to be a morning, we start them early.
Yeah, I'll be there, but I don't like mornings. Okay, and then we can also let, the rest of the board, you're more than welcome to attend committee meetings, just not participate as a committee member. But I think that, once that is on the books, we'll just make sure it is sent out to everyone, because I think that is in fact an important meeting, if you're able to attend. So I know we don't always attend each other's committee meetings, but that's probably one of the more important ones, because we only meet once as a board. And then that work can start to get sorted out before our next board meeting. Anything else in terms of the budget? Okay, I think that's a good directive, and I think that's a good place to start. Okay, before we move on to the budget update, anything else on the budget update? Okay. Okay, moving on to the calendar update. So Public Act 19-195 allows boards of education to establish a firm graduation date for students in grade 12 for that school year, which at the time of establishment provides for at least 180 days of school. In accordance with this Public Act, Superintendent Benigni is recommending that the board set the date of the 2025 Berlin High School graduation date for Friday, June 13th, 2025. I know we have a motion on our agenda. However, I do want to bring up a concern of my own. So we can table this if we want, but we're going to need a motion for consideration regardless. So do I have a motion for consideration before we get into discussion?
I'll move to adopt the 2024-2025 Berlin Public Schools calendar as proposed and set the 2025 Berlin High School graduation date for Friday, June 13th, 2025.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So motion by Carrie, second by Gina. So we can open it up for our discussion now. My concern is this is the second time, this is not the first time that the start of school year is being brought up. I think it's important to take our last conversation into account. A few board meetings ago where we discussed when we're starting school, when we're ending school, and it's been that discussion around what week of August are we coming back. I think that it would be in the best.
Are you talking about this one? Or are you concerned
Nope,
about
24, 25, yeah, because the school, you have that right there, right? So here we have students start on the 30th and then end on the 13th.
They start on the 29th.
29th, okay, yeah, sorry, I was looking at the first. Okay, so they start on the 29th and end on the 13th, June 13th, no snow days. Parents have expressed concerns about that. I know there's some people who say they want to start earlier and get out earlier. There's people who say they want to start later and get out later. I know as a board, we're always cognizant of when and how we're surveying the community, but I think that there's many stakeholders involved in this. There's families, there are teachers, there's admin, there's all the other employees. I think that it would be in the best interest for the board to make a well-informed decision, to have some more data before we make a decision. I would hate for us as a board to say, yep, looks good, go ahead. And then now we're hearing from families that, liked it the way it's starting next year. And then we're moving it back again. And it's back and forth and back and forth. I just, we can do what we like with the survey data. We can read it how we would like to. But I think surveying families is really important, as well as school employees. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments around that.
I would agree. We had the meeting right before the curriculum meeting, and I know the 2023-2004 has already been voted on, but this information wasn't on the calendar, not something that I had thought of before voting, thinking of the retreat and the new teacher training that happens a week prior. So like you said, having all of the information before making the decision, I think would be fair.
Right, and I don't think we're saying, oh, the survey data is gonna come back one way or the other, and we're gonna go in favor of one, but it's gonna just help us make a well-informed decision, so later on down the road, if people aren't happy with the way things are going, then we can speak more to it. This is set by the board, and it is a board decision, but I think, you know, the board having more information to make that decision. Anyone else wanna share anything? Adam, do you have anything you want to share on this or no? Yeah, you can drink your water. That's
Listen, my only issue last time that we were talking about the 23-24 calendars that we had already voted on it. There was reconsideration. My thought was we already voted on it. It was already out there. Let's keep it the way it is. If you want to take a survey for the 24-25 calendar, I'm no issue with that.
Okay. Anyone else want to add their 2 cents?
So I'm not sure of what the conflict is here. So I see that in 23-24, we're starting a week earlier than we are in 24-25. If I saw this correctly.
Yep.
And we pushed graduation off a week. And historically, we have started before Labor Day. And this would be 2 days basically prior to the Labor Day weekend. So I'm not really sure what we're gonna be asking. Like, obviously, people weren't keen on the calendar coming up because it started so early. So we pushed it back a week, which is more in line with what we have been traditionally. So,
So from my perspective, I see what.
Confused about why we're gonna put it on hold. My question is, why are we setting graduation 2 years out? Used to we set it in April of the year we were in. Now we're 2 years ahead. So I'm more confused by that piece than what the calendar looks like.
So when we think about the issues that were brought forward, when I think about the issues that were brought forward, it was from just a small group, and I don't think we have an accurate sampling of data to look at that and say, this is truly what, you know, the community and the stakeholders are coming to us for. So I think, you know, I'm not saying that the group that came forward and had issues, I'm not saying they weren't well represented, but I wouldn't want, you know, a greater good of people to really be happy with this. You know, I remember Adam's, not to put you out there, Adam's concerns about, you know, I like when we end it, parents can plan vacations, people like to get out earlier. So, like, I think valid points were brought up last time. And so I would hate to, like, go back and forth each year based on certain feedback from small groups rather than getting feedback from a greater good and then us just looking at that, making a decision. I don't know what another month is going to necessarily do. That was just my, right.
It's 2 years from now.
So, like, the reason why the
Probably well
graduation,
gone by then,
the
so it
first
doesn't
question,
matter.
the reason why the graduation's on there is, with the new law, we have the ability to set the graduation out. Prior, we didn't, because we had to meet 108 days.
Well,
So
yeah,
when
but
you- when you
now we're
set- when you
2
set-
years out.
Right, but when you set the calendar, as long as the calendar is approved, we can set the graduation, because the approved calendar means you can set the graduation with the law. So that's the only reason why graduation's here. Well, in years past, we had to wait to make sure we have the 108 days.
Well, but Brian, you're still gonna have that issue, right? I mean, if you might have a snow day tomorrow, but if in 24, 25, we have 10 snow days, you're gonna have high school seniors that are gonna go only 170 days.
Right, we would have the issue, but before, we couldn't do that. With the new law, we can, once it's established.
Yeah, but just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
Right, but if we set the calendar, I think the graduation date can come, we've always set the graduation date with the calendar conjunction. If the board wants to wait to set the graduation date like we used to, I don't have an issue with that. As far as getting survey data, I have no problem getting a survey data on this thing, on the calendar. There has been comments made by staff about how early next year is. But those are staff comments, and those are impromptu comments, not like we took a survey. So I think if you're surveying the staff and you're surveying the parents, you'll get the data. Whoever responds, you'll get a better picture of what people really want in the calendar.
I would expect you to get 2 different answers.
I think you will.
We might, right.
And then you'll have to make the decision anyway.
But I think but at least we have the data to stand by it, rather than saying, you know, one group is unhappy and then people from that one group are saying, well, I liked it the way it was. I think other points that were brought up last time that were valid was the quality of education in August versus June. I remember one board member brought that up. I remember someone bringing up athletics in preseason and athletics being a valid point. I know another point could be summer camps end by a certain date, so maybe parents want kids back sooner because then they have one last week to pay for childcare. But again, I would feel more comfortable voting on this and making a decision for something, down the road if we just have this at our disposal and we can make our decision. Anyone disagree with that?
I don't disagree with it. I think it's a good idea. I just think in what you were saying about taking a survey or getting a sense of what people want, I think when we look at the start of the school year, that's really not the first day. It's the first day for students, but teachers are in the classroom probably a week before, right? I mean, you guys are probably there at least 3 or 4 days. So now you're tacking on another week for them. It's I don't know. For me, I would think the 29th is a great day to start. We used to go after Labor Day. I know that was moons ago. I know, I'm aging myself, but still, I think 24 that's early. And I think it's.
But that's this year. Next year, we push it back to the 29th.
I know we're not going to revise this year, but I'm just saying, going forward, I think the 24th is, because of the fact that teachers are going in the building.
My thing is we're going to put out a survey and put somebody in charge of tabulating all the results and getting results for something that we probably already know the answer to. So we're putting work on the district staff to do something that we probably already know the answer to. That's all.
But I think we can stand by our decision if people are upset about it, and we can make a well-informed decision based on the data that we're given.
And there are times when we have thought that we knew what people were going to want and respond positively to, and we were wrong. So.
Yep, that happened once.
I know, you weren't here for that.
But again, we're not saying we're going to go up based off majority rules. We're going to see what the data comes back as, and then we can have a better discussion.
Okay.
We want to know when graduation in 2026 will be too.
We'll set that next month. I'm just kidding. Okay, so we have a motion. So are we voting on this or
Just
table it? We're just going to table it. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to table that till the next meeting. Thank you, everyone, for understanding. Okay, moving on to the next item. So, revisions to the 2023-2024 school calendar. Before I turn this over to the superintendent, I need a motion for consideration before we open it up to discussion.
I move to approve the revisions to the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented.
Do we have a second? Second. Motion by Melissa, second by Adam. Okay, now we can open it up to discussion.
Yeah, if you look at the expanded agenda, it specifies what the changes are. Most of them are internal changes because of conferences, report card dates, testing dates. There's one PD move, so I'll read through it. Move the elementary and middle school conference schedule in November to October. Move the middle school conference schedule in March to February. Revise some report card dates. Move testing dates listed below the report card dates. Move conference snow date. Move afternoon professional development on December 13th to December 6th. Those are just internal coordinations of when it makes more sense for whether it's report card dates, conferences, so on. Based on the conference dates, that's based on information gained from the staff as well as the administration at the building level.
Was there any discussion in the curriculum committee meeting earlier today that was discussed that?
These changes were pretty straightforward, I think, for most of us. We understood why they were making the changes. I mean, I'll invite, well, Jamie's not here, but I'll invite you to correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, but I think it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, me looking at it as a parent perspective too, I thought that changing, the time for the conferences a little bit earlier, especially in October, because then you can actually, the kids are starting to get their routines, allows the parents to get to know the teachers before you're, really dive into the year. So I thought it would just be beneficial.
Anyone else have anything they want to add to the discussion? Questions, comments? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 7-0. Hey, so now we are going to talk a little bit about the Juneteenth holiday. I'm going to have Denise talk a little bit about it, but before, well, you can talk about it, then we can move to a motion, then open it up for discussion on the board. So go ahead.
Okay. So for those of you who may not know, Juneteenth is a federal holiday in the United States that commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. It's celebrated on the anniversary of the General Order No. 3, which was issued by Major General Gordon Granger on June 19, 1865, proclaiming freedom for slaves in Texas. The day was first recognized as a federal holiday in 2021 by President Joe Biden when he signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law. On October 1st, 2022, the state of Connecticut also added Juneteenth as a recognized state holiday, and all state employees will receive the day off with pay starting this year. And the Berlin Town Council unanimously voted at their second meeting in January of 2023 to include Juneteenth in the list of observed holidays for town employees. MOUs were signed by all bargaining groups, and Juneteenth will be a paid day off beginning this year for all town employees. So what we are asking is to provide that same benefit to Board of Education employees who are working on June 19th. Generally speaking, as you all just discussed, school is over before this holiday falls into place. So this really would only impact approximately 72 employees. And we would word it in the contract that if school happened to be in session on that day, those employees would be expected to work, and they would be given a floating holiday in lieu of that day, which is what we've done in the past with other holidays. The other consideration is just to understand that when the town is closed and the Board of Ed is open, we don't have the facility staff available to us if something should happen. There's nobody to call. And so that would include electrical, plumbing, and those kinds of things.
Do we have a motion for consideration?
I'll move to declare Juneteenth, June 19th, a paid holiday for staff who work the full calendar year, administrators, IT, clerical, and custodial staff, beginning June 19th, 2023.
Do we have a second? Motion by Carrie, second by Peter. Okay, now we can open up for discussion or questions for Denise.
So Denise, I asked this during the F&O committee last week, so I'll ask it in front of the whole board, this is an additional holiday. It is not in lieu of anything. It's an additional day off during the year.
Correct.
Only if it goes past.
Well, it's
If their school's in session.
it's an additional holiday for,
Oh, so you can use that
Yes.
as a floating holiday.
right, so we would only be doing it for the employees that work the full school year. So that
Okay.
would include administrators, clerical, custodian, IT. Teachers, paraprofessionals, food services are off when this day happens, similar to July 4th, right? So
Right.
the full year staff get July 4th, the others aren't working, so they don't get that holiday recognized. But yes, we are looking to provide it as an additional day.
So if school goes past this day, what would the calendar look like?
So if school goes past this day, and June 19th is a school day for kids, all of those 12-month employees would be expected to work. And then
And
we
they
would
could
give them a
float.
floating holiday in lieu of that. And we would, hopefully, we know that by April 1st, and we would work that day in somewhere, whether it's at the end of June or,
So they'd have to use it between June 19th
Right.
and June 30th.
right. Unless we know for sure that when we're setting the calendar that we're going that far. But yes.
Any other questions, concerns?
Was there any talk about, so we're granting the holiday, which I'm in favor of, but employees have to work the day before and the day after, so they can't attach it to,
So we might have language like that in some of the union contracts with regards to all holidays. So this would just be added into that, but we didn't actually discuss that when we were talking about it.
So the town did give it to all groups without change of contracts, correct?
Correct.
What other questions you guys have, if this is new information to you?
This will not be given to teachers should the school year ever go beyond June 19th.
No, so teachers work 188 days. If if school went beyond that Juneteenth day, you folks would decide, is it a holiday for students? Is it a holiday? That means they don't work, but they still get paid their 188 days for teaching. It would just extend the year, or they're all in session working that day.
Adam, Melissa, do you guys have anything? Okay. All right, we can move to a vote then. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the vote carries 7-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Denise. So, policy review revision, the first reading of policy 3323, purchasing. And this is just the first reading. It says the town council approved increasing the bid threshold from $10,000 to $25,000 for the purchase of goods and services requiring the competitive bidding process. Superintendent Benigni is proposing that our purchasing policy be revised to reflect the same increase. The ad hoc committee for policy review and revision met on March 6th to discuss the recommended revisions. Since this is a first reading, no action is required. The second reading and adoption will take place at the April 24th, 2023 board meeting. Any questions, comments, concerns about this? Anyone want to share anything out from the ad hoc? Okay, so no action needs to be taken. So we just have a few more agenda items. The next one is the outdoor classroom at the McGee Middle School. We went over this in our F&O committee meeting, and we have Mr. Cugno who's going to talk to us a little bit about this, and we also have John Schmaltz here, and Saller, so they all came out for the end. And Linda. So
Evening, folks. I will make this as brief as I can. This is a conversation that is a little bit more than...
hold the microphone.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Let me start that again.
Good evening.
No, anyways. Good evening, folks. This is a conversation that's a little bit larger than a McGee outdoor classroom because a number of things have been brought up to do with that type of development. The talking points for this, although they'll be quick, there's 4 of them. The proposed project, the facility use of McGee, at McGee, safety and security. I want to thank, first of all, the stuff you're going to see up here tonight and a lot of the conversation that's gone on. I want to thank Nick and Ashley for putting together the slides, putting together the format. Eric from AI Engineering, who I believe is zoomed in here somewhere, helped to put together a site plan. Linda Holian, naturally, it's her proposal to begin with. Sal, our president, and John Smoltz for security. From the project itself, I'll go through quickly. I hope.
Excuse me.
Isn't it supposed to go? There we go. Okay, once again, part of this is getting site plans approved in order to build things. And that's the facility part, that's the project proposed. The red is obviously the school. You've seen this before. You saw it at the last meeting. F&O committee also saw it. The only addition right now is you will see that there is, oh, I can't do it that way, huh? Can I go back? You will see that there is a fence around the site, this orange piece, if you can see it, that goes all the way from the front of the school where the sidewalk is, goes around the area of the proposed project and then up around the driveway. There was some consideration last time in the conversation that the children on the site, or the students on the site, may be too close to the driveway, maybe too close to the parking lot. These are one of the ways that we've already decided upon to advance is a guardrail around there. There was conversations of what kind of guardrail it is. We have a few things here to show, which AI Engineering has offered to us. These are 2 different types of guardrails they suggest. One's a little fancier than the other. The third one they've given me a picture of also. These are, by the way, DOT safety guardrails. These are already, approved by DOT. The third one they offered was the normal iron one that goes around The comment that came with it, though, however, if you put that near kids and they run up against it, they could get hurt. So we're suggesting that it's going to be one of these two guardrails. If you move forward with just some quick shots, I want to make sure that everybody understands where the facility is and also where the rest of McGee facility is used for overall. This is the site. That's what it looks like now. Front of it, same thing as a site plan. It's a very large area. There's nothing on it at this point. It's not really used at all, though, Linda, you have said a few times that the students do go out there at some point. A couple of more shots to show you where the entry is, see where other parking is, other movement of cars is nowhere near this. It's a pretty isolated area. In front of the school, we all know what that looks like. And if you see other pieces to McGee that are part of the curriculum, part of how it's used by the students and the staff, these are all open areas. You can see the basketball courts, you can see the tennis courts. There's no fencing or anything around these. And you can see the sites in the back, which are a very large field. There is some fencing right here at the road level here. But there's a lot of outside areas at McGee that get used constantly by the students and by the staff. That's important to note because it's going to be addressed in a few minutes on what kind of rules and regulations we have for these kind of uses. I just got a couple more things to show. I wanted to make sure that you knew that any roadway is well away from this site. So, and very frankly, that drops off about 10 feet down there, so you really even can't see the site. So that's the project itself. The project's going to be a platform, concrete platform, with a very, very nice pavilion, steel pavilion, commercial grade, to be used in a number of ways that the students want to use it. And I'm sure if you want to speak to Linda, if you want to speak to Sal, they can talk about the kind of classes they want to have out there. But that's the project part of it. Hold on a second. A couple of pavilions to give you a little idea what we're talking about. Two different ones. These are both steel. These are both very sizable. These are 20 by 30 pavilions. We think that's about the size we're going to be needing to put on the kind of classes and classrooms we like. And so they're very nice looking. Nothing that's going to overpower anything. They are not residential looking. They will match relatively well with what goes on with McGee as a school, as you've seen. Okay. Couple of things now. What was addressed at the last meeting is what are we considering on putting a development with students out in the front, relatively open, relatively close to anybody walking into the area. Even the guardrail that we've got up here is only for cars. It's not that people can't step over the guardrail and walk in. What are we proposing as a district? Not only for this development, but what would this has brought up a lot of conversations, is what is done in the district for our schools, specifically McGee, for safety and security. So what I've asked for tonight is to have John Smoltz, this is Sal's first. Sal this is not stuff that was put together for this meeting. These are the protocols and procedures that we use in McGee and similar to the ones we use in all the schools, because in all honesty, the safety and security of the students is usually looked at before we do anything. There's outside work, there's outside activities in all our schools constantly. So this has been considered, but for this particular project, we want to speak about this. Sal, can you help me out here?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
You want to come up or you want to stand?
No.
Come dance with me.
Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so thank you. So there's really two scenarios. They're right there, black and white. So the first scenario is that our students that are in physical education are escorted outside. They do go out in the spring. They do sometimes go out in weather like today, obviously not as bad as today, but they do go outside. So the protocol is that they carry radios. Our radios are digital radios, which actually will go to dispatch, to Berlin Police Dispatch if there was ever an issue. Students are supervised to and from the learning spaces by the PE staff, which would be from the locker rooms, to and from the locker rooms. They also have the badges, so if they need to come back in for like a reverse evacuation, whether there's animals out there or
we had a bear one time when I was principal at Willard School. We actually had to have people come back in. So there are times when we do what's called a reverse evacuation, which we practice at times because we do have safety protocols for each of the different, scenarios that we have. So basically, students are escorted to and from, and then they have radios and badges from their teachers. The second scenario would be if staff choose to go outside, whether it's the back of the building, the side of the building, wherever that it may be. Sometimes they'll take students out to read. It could be for a short time. It could be for a break. When we were using mask breaks, it was not uncommon for people to be outside. But in order for them to do that, because we can't afford a radio for everyone, teachers are required to radio the office. The office calls the armed security officer. The armed security officer goes outside and makes sure that they're monitored. If we have, people at different three different parts, say someone goes out to this area, then someone's in the back, someone's on the side, then the armed security officer would roam, and we would get them back in safely if they needed to. It's not without risk because students are outside, but these are the protocols that we have in place. If you want to go down, we do have, I don't know if you're interested, but can you go down a little bit? So we do have safety protocols, which we practice, and there's all kinds of different ones that we have. But for students that are outside, it would be the reverse evacuation, or if we need to locate them to Willard School or another area across the street, we would do that.
Can I just ask a real quick question? This is a minor point, but
Yep.
that part that says radio, okay, it doesn't say it anymore because it's disappeared, but it says radio with the potential to dispatch Berlin PD. Is that one radio?
So when teachers go out, if I was to go out, I would call do you mean the PE teachers, like scenario 1 or 2?
The last bullet on
If
that
you just go
screen.
back to the Google Doc at the
Yeah, let me
top.
see. Could you go back to that?
I don't think he's controlling
It says radio capable of Berlin Police
Berlin,
Department dispatch.
right. What is
Oh,
that radio?
yeah. So our radios have different channels. So channel 1 would be the office and our counselors. If you go, yes, all of the radios. So if you crank it all the way, like after channel 5, I think it's like 6 through 8 through 15. You just crank it over. If somebody's on the ground, we've had it happen. Somebody gets injured outside.
But every
it goes
radio-
directly.
So for how many radios do you have?
We have, our office staff carry them, our mental health providers carry them,
So if there are multiple faculty members outside at the same time, they each have a radio with capability to
the
Berlin
PE
PD?
teachers do, but not, say, the English teacher wants to go outside, ELA teacher wants to go outside.
So
We
then-
don't have enough radios to,
Got it.
they're
So my next
$2,000
question will be
a
for
piece.
John.
Yeah. So
Okay, thank
that's
you.
why the ASO goes out there
Yep,
with it.
got
If
it.
we had, when they were cheaper, we used to put them out at each locations, and somebody would grab, they weren't digital,
Right.
and they would grab them and go outside, and then they would call the office.
Got it.
These are more capable because they come all the way down here.
So then, so what you're saying is when you have multiple groups, you have school security out there
Every time.
circulating? Every time.
That's the protocol. So if you go outside, you need to call the office, the ASO goes outside. with
Every
them.
time someone goes outside.
Every
there's an
time, that's the protocol.
The ASO is out there.
Yep. Now, we only have one, so
Right.
if we needed to, if there were multiple and someone was available, maybe John would come out, we can talk to all of our security officers. But right now, that hasn't been the case. When people go out, it's usually one at a time. We send our security officer out.
Okay.
Do you have a question for John?
I do, but I think he has something to say
Okay,
next.
keep going.
Okay, that's all I have for
Save
now.
your question, don't forget.
As you can imagine, Sal and come on, no, it's not going to move at all. Hey, Nick. Okay.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Well, okay. We got up safety protocols all right, and we just need district outdoor protocols now.
Do you have something you want to add, Brian?
Just that I know in our F&O meeting, as well as that last board meeting, the concerns about the openness of the area and things. And I think that's the part that John can address, as far as, if there was a fence around it, what it would do aesthetically. The wooden guardrail system would prevent the automobiles, as we talked about last time. But I know that the board had questions about the safety of students being outside. So in this presentation, part of it was, what are our current safety procedures, and how would they relate to having a new area such as a pavilion?
These are protocols that are put across for the whole district that address a number of things, including student. John, can you?
It's in Schoology, I believe.
And realize, guys like Sal and John and their staffs and all the other teachers
This is it.
and administrators that are here live the safety and security stuff at our facilities every day. This is one facility we're talking about. We've got 5 facilities. And we've got obviously 2,700 students and a bunch of teachers. Security, protocols, and rules, and what you do when and how everybody lives every day. I hear a good amount about them, not that I direct them, but I hear a good amount of them because I work with security in the facilities.
Okay, Sal did a pretty good job of explaining the protocols for gym classes. K through 5
Sorry,
have
can
the
you just zoom in for everyone to see, because it's not in Schoology. Oh, Nick, can you just zoom in, please? Control Z. It's fine. Just hit Control Z.
The lower right-hand corner.
The bottom, yeah, there you go. That's good. Nope, that's fine. Could we just get a copy of this uploaded to Schoology?
Yep.
Thanks.
Hopefully tomorrow.
Okay, like I said, Sal covered a lot of this type of stuff, and some of the other stuff in the communication process is, when the staff members go outside, they gotta take attendance. And again, it doesn't have to be by name. If you have 15, 20 students, you gotta go out with 15, come back with 15. If you're missing one, gotta be able to have a means to locate that individual. Recess periods a little more intense because you have children, cling to the teachers, other ones running around crazy. Other ones get involved in the athletic activities out there. And the ASOs are basically trained to be 360 awareness, like an outside perimeter, whereas the staff members are responsible for the students that they're responsible for. But the ASO generally looks around, outside the fences, looks around for animals, individuals, vehicles that aren't common to the school area. So to pay attention to a little bit more. The outside classes, and the protocols came about basically from the COVID times of when the students went outside with staff. We met with to the school administrators, make sure you know who's outside, where they're going to be, when they're coming back in, so we know how many people are outside if there is an emergency, whether it's a lockdown, a secure school, a reverse evacuation, a fire drill, a fire alarm goes off, so everybody's accounted for. So the outdoor classes with the teachers at the high school, the lead teachers generally had radios assigned to them. The teacher would sign it out from there. But in the other schools, each central office has a dispatch radio system in there, a fixed unit, and they also have 2 portable radios that could be signed out. So if a teacher needed to go outside, they didn't have a radio that they weren't able to take from another one, they could go to the office and take that out there. So the key thing is the communication plan and redundancy. So when you go switch to when you're on the radio frequencies, if they call for help, and if you're just using a cell phone or a regular telephone, nobody picks up the phone, nobody's paying attention to it, nobody's going to hear it. If you have the radio system, everybody has a radio, will hear it. So if somebody calls, hey, we have a child stung by a bee, the nurses be able to hear it, custodians may be able to help the ASO, or the teachers who may be medically certified or free be able to respond to it. So you have that going for it. And the key thing is, when you're setting up this plan, it's looking at all the accountability, the open space area. Again, I always go back to the inner outer perimeters. So you have the school perimeter, the fence that goes around the building, or the curtilage of the property. And here at McGee, we do the evaluation. If somebody's driving onto the property, your focus is where you're driving your car. You're generally going to where the bus drop-off is, where the main entrances are, and exits for the kids. You're really not going to really take note of the students in the left front of the building where they are. So they have that little, not a secrecy, but a little more reduced sight lines from people coming in there, which I think adds to the safety. The guardrails for any vehicles that may pop out of gear, don't have the emergency brake on, driver has a medical emergency, or slow it down. And again, what Sal's alluding to with the radios, you go to the emergency channel, everybody who has a radio in the district's going to hear it, and the police department's going to know, and part of the training with the radios is, if you're on the emergency channel, you identify your location at McGee Middle School, then whatever the issue is. So even if you got McGee Middle School out, came over the emergency, there'd be emergency response from the first responders, the police department. And the SRO's in the high school, and he's a short distance away. So you have the ASO at the building, the SRO, it's a short distance away, and myself generally at the high school most of the time during the business day. You have any specific questions pertaining to the safety or the security of the area?
So, I'll ask a question. Thank you. So last time we discussed this, I mean, I think what I had, when I started off having difficulty sort of reconciling in my own brain was all of the measures that we undertook to ensure the security of our buildings, like the vestibules and so on and so forth, and then, you know, making the choice to put an outdoor classroom. I fully recognize that there are outdoor spaces that are used by students all the time, whether it's a playground or a basketball court or a tennis court or whatnot. And I appreciate that staff and students at not just at Berlin schools but elsewhere live and breathe the safety of our students. But I also have a little like soft spot. I don't know. I worry about. I guess my worry more so for the students who will make use of this particular outdoor classroom is that they are a more vulnerable population, and so may take different approaches to responding to a crisis, or may be more inclined to, we like to say, elope in schools or whatnot. So I appreciate that there is now a physical barrier that's been proposed for that piece. I will share that I very recently attended a school safety symposium wherein my awareness of how quickly really bad things can happen in schools was heightened. And so, not to bring a gray cloud over this meeting, but when we're talking about things like school shootings, the reason why I sort of zeroed in on that, how many radios are there, and who has them, and what's the response? It was really, it became. I became painfully aware of how seconds count as opposed to minutes, right, in responding to something like that. So it is concerning to me now to think there is one SRO at this building and or one, or maybe there are multiple radios, but I wonder what the preparedness is of our staff in knowing what the channels are that they need to be on, if in which case there's an emergency, and do they call the SRO first and then the SRO responds and then calls another SRO to come, all of that in terms of the rollout of a response.
Right, emergency situation, say you have gunfire, you hear gunfire.
Right.
All you have to do is go to the emergency channel, like it says, give the location, hear possible gunshots or whatever. And this is the training when the radios were handed out. There was an itinerary that the administration provided to the people to train them for what the specific channels were for and what you do on the emergency channel. So
and they've all been trained in that and practiced that, and they're well equipped to do that and execute that when.
I can't speak for every individual
Okay.
has one, but
I'm
yes,
saying
they
that
were.
I don't expect you
they
to
were
answer
given
that.
that direction.
Yeah.
And the number of radios varies by school based on the population of the school. There's
Mhm.
162 or 152 radios in the school district. With the grant, we're looking to add another 60 radios to cover some of these other bases, so it's not an inconvenience for the staff members who need them. And I can't say the majority, but a lot of radios are in the special needs, for the special education department, or it's the paras, and they may share them. If they leave a classroom, go to another location in the building, they take their radio with them, so if they have an emergency, they could contact somebody internally. And at the high school, it seems to work out very well, where if somebody needs something, it's got on the radio, we're looking for a student or the student that need, a wheelchair, the elevator's not working, something along those lines. It's immediate communications, so you got to have this redundancy, and this is where the radios provide that, and it's simple to operate. And best of my knowledge, there really isn't any problems. People get the radio at first, they're a little bit afraid, and kind of tell them, go to this radio channel, just practice it. John, Call, and Carrie. So you get comfortable, because people are afraid.
Yeah.
It's something new to them.
Right,
But I
of
think
course.
majority of people adapted to it.
Yeah, I mean, I asked these questions because I think it's important that we entertain them and take this sort of proactive, preventative approach when we can see a potential issue. You know, be forward-thinking rather than have someone say, "Why didn't you think of that?" Like, there's an outdoor classroom right up
So
front.
it goes
and-
back to the training, lockdowns, and again, Will didn't get into Sal's last part of his presentation, but the lockdown drills, secure school, reverse evacuations, earthquakes, weather-related type stuff. So again, everybody's been trained on it. They have their folders inside the classrooms. They have their primary, secondary evacuation points. So again, I think the administrators did a good job training their staff. And again, some staff are going to perform tremendously. And other ones are going to be a flop, depending on the situation. You're not going to know it till the time you do it.
Yeah.
And as you know, you can't train realistically because you don't want to create that anxiety and stress for the students and staff members. So part of the training process is, in the early part of the school year, it's the basic fire drill. Further into the school year, you block off a certain part of the building, staff members and students have to make a decision. What's the secondary egress point from the building, and so forth. The same thing with the reverse evacuation. Everybody does a fire drill, they go outside. But if the kids are outside, what do they do with the fire drill or the reverse evacuation? Gym classes come back inside, generally the ones who are outside. So it's a training issue.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We don't have to take action on this, but it's more just a point of discussion this evening.
I think the fact that it's been brought up and been reviewed by John and his security team, and staff is comfortable with it, and I'm comfortable with it as well. Thank you.
Great.
Just a couple things for the board.
Nope, we went back to our last agenda, there was no action on it. I wasn't sure if action needed to be taken for this project to begin, but
It's all grant funding, correct?
There was an action on the first agenda, not that needed action, there was a discussion, because we didn't want to move forward with a project without the board knowing about it and giving input as such.
We will be going forward with the project. It already is budgeted. We've got some cost estimates coming, and we've got to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission on a number of things. They also want to see what the pavilion is. So there'll be some activity going on in this. Just want to make sure that the board knows of the project and knows that we're going forward and using grant money to propose it.
great. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. On our last agenda, we did not have action, we just tabled a discussion, so, on this agenda, there is no action, so I'm assuming we do not need it. Okay, last item for discussion, and again, this is discussion only. So, the superintendent received a request from the registrar of voters to align the school calendars with the referendum voting dates. I know that we already had 2 agenda items about calendar dates. However, this is a separate issue, and I think it, should have a separate discussion. We can also continue the discussion later on at another meeting. Schools are currently closed for November state and federal elections. They're requesting that schools not be in session for referendum dates. Per the town charter, a referendum is held every last Tuesday in April, and if required, a second referendum shall be held 4 weeks following the first referendum. I think there's a few points to discuss this evening. So the first point that I've requested for it to be included in Schoology, the referendum numbers. Which one is it? Oh, yeah, the email of information from registrars. So that has how many people have voted, the date, how many voted at polls, so on and so forth. Our last, the referendum, April 27th, 2021, we had 2.61% vote at the referendum. So I think looking at the data that's included in Schoology is an important point to consider to guide our discussion. The next point, I know that, in the past, we have had a parent come forward and talk about school security during referendums and why are schools open for those, but not other elections. So I'm glad that we do have John Schmaltz here today, so if he does want to answer any questions about the safety and security protocols on referendum dates. And then I think another important point to consider as we have this discussion, though no action is being taken, the new legislation around early voting and what that's going to do for our polling locations. So I guess the question is, you know, should we be closing schools for referendums? I am going to just open it up and see if you guys have any questions, comments, and just have a discussion, and then we can decide what type of action, if any, we want at a future board meeting. Peter, you can start.
I think it'd be helpful to have one of the registrar of voters here to answer questions, primarily that, you know, from what I've read, the Secretary of State wants to do 10 days of early voting potentially. So what is voting in the town even going to look like? Are they going to consolidate it to one polling place? Are they going to be using different locations because now people have a 10-day opportunity to vote? My point is this even something we need to visit if, you know, by next year the entire voting stations, et cetera, are going to be completely different, and this may not even be an issue?
You want to speak to
Yeah, I
that?
just think it's important to note that this is something that for 2 years, when people reached out to me, and I've said that it's not something we're going to entertain. What about another location in town? And they're pretty adamant that it has to be at the schools. So the email I've received, and the reason why it's here is that, you know, in responding twice already, that they feel that has to be at a higher power, all of you, that it's important too. And the registrar of voters were notified that it would be on the agenda this evening, so.
You have anything? Yeah.
So I agree with Peter, because the voting is going to look a lot different, I think, and to try to change as difficult as it is for us to change a calendar for graduation dates and everything. I don't know that we could be able to put in additional days. I saw some of the information that was put in Schoology, and there's talk about maybe moving some PD days, but most of our PD takes place earlier in the year. It does not take place in April. That's number one. Number two is the charter says the last Tuesday in April, but then if that gets defeated, we have another vote 4 weeks later. So we might have a secondary referendum vote. We might not. I mean, just honestly, my personal opinion is I think I've got a lot of opinions on budget referendums, but I think that if anything, it should just be moved to another location. I never thought that the referendum vote belongs in the schools. Usually, typically, historically, you're in single digits for people, single-digit percentages of people coming out for referendum vote. We've got community center, we've got a library, we've got Pistol Creek, we've got so many different locations that it can go to. We used to, one referendum years ago, we had it just at the American Legion Hall. And it was just a single location for it because it was a referendum, and it was during the school year. We didn't want to shut down schools. So I think there are a lot of different opportunities out there to utilize other town facilities, but to try to shut down schools for 2 additional days, I think is a little bit difficult. We're fortunate, election day closed. Primary day in August already closed. And if you look at some of these dates, I mean, we've had some special elections. We've had some other referendums, but I mean, typically a budget referendum, when you have 3, 4, 5% of the voting public coming out, and that's the percentage of 15,406 total voters. So if you get a couple percentage points of those people coming out, I don't think it's worth closing down schools for. I think it's better to look at an alternative location and say, for your elections, you're voting here, and for a budget referendum, you're voting at an alternate location. But again, based on some of the potential changes with early voting, it's going to change everything, and I don't even know if the schools are going to be a viable option going forward. So that's my thought.
Well said.
You agree? Okay.
Absolutely.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, I mean, even just as a new parent at Willard, I thought it was kind of absurd that I couldn't take my 3-year-old to play on the playscape right next to the school, but the school was open, to strangers. In and out, open doors. So I totally agree with Adam. I think a different location would be best for.
Matt, do you have anything?
I totally agree. When I was reading through this, I was like, I didn't really know how to take it, right? So yes, we could schedule the last Tuesday in April. We certainly could. But what happens 4 weeks later?
Right.
And we all know how it goes, right?
By the way, I'm sorry, 4 weeks after the 29th in 2025 happens to be the day after Memorial Day. So then it's like even a longer weekend. I mean, it's just, there are complications that come along with this.
I don't think it's wise that we touch this year's school calendar either. However, it's not.
Right, look, it's a request from our partners in the community, but
Alternative locations are what I suggested the last 2 years, just so you know. So I'm glad you're having the same suggestion.
So for the concerns about safety during referendum, what safety protocols and measures do we have in place to keep the students safe while we open up the buildings? Thought you were done for the night. I just think it's worth touching base on.
Yeah, the voting areas are contained to basically to the gym, cafeterias, depending what school it is. And Berlin Police does provide a police officer, so it's not like the playground. There's no law enforcement on scene. Law enforcement's on scene, plus the armed security officers well aware what's going on, and obviously his function is more containing it to that, point A to point B, in and out of the building, keep people from wandering. But again, I agree with Brian, and Adam said it best. Really shouldn't be doing in the schools with these alternative locations.
Can you just speak to the entrances that are used? Because my understanding, entrances are separate from the student entrance, and there's not a securities there.
Yeah, the primary entrance they use, the shortest point to the gym, I'm calling the gym or the cafeteria. They go in and they come right back out. It's not walking through the hallways, from the office down the hallway. It's directed. There's signage out there. There's people from the voting registrar's office directing people. So it's more of a nuisance to the school. And I agree, I'd rather not have it in the school because they're supposed to be secured when the staff and students are in there. So I agree.
Do you feel that we're doing everything we can in terms of safety, school safety and security protocols to mitigate potential issues?
I mean, you could always do more. I mean, how much money do you have? How much staff resources do you have? I think with the staffing we have, I think we do a good job. Plus law enforcement be in there, so you have a current officer and a retired officer, so you get 2 officers in the school who've done this a million times before. We're in tune, you're doing a threat assessment. Anybody walks in there, we look at you, we evaluate you, what type of threat, what you carry, and how you're dressed. So again, it just comes second nature. You're watching people you're watching. And if somebody appears to be out of the ordinary, you kind of just drift over into that area, and you're paying more attention to them, or you want to make them feel uncomfortable, you get a little bit closer to them. I mean, it's just the nature of human nature, how you deal with it, and your perception. So, I'd say we're in good shape.
Okay, and we haven't had any issues, right?
Not
during referendums. Okay.
Not since I've been here, no.
Any other discussion?
I think a lot of it too was traffic in the parking lots. It was very chaotic, So I think between the parents and having school that day, there was just a lot of parking issues and a lot of cars, and so that I know people had mentioned that. So
right,
not as critical as inside the school, I know, but still, just safety in general for people trying to get in and out of the parking lot.
So the position of the board, without obviously taking a vote, is we hope that it can be moved to another location, and then, it'll be mutually beneficial to all. Okay. All right. So there's one last item on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
So the meeting is adjourned at 8:46. Thank you, everyone, for a long meeting.